What's up, guys? Metal571 here, and today I want to talk about the Beyerdynamic DT1770 Pro. You may recognize that these are similar to a previous headphone I've reviewed before, the 770, and you'd be correct. This is really the new, upgraded model from the DT770s, which I've covered previously in multiple videos, actually. Beyerdynamic says they're closed studio reference headphones for mixing, mastering, monitoring, and recording. They have 250 ohm 45 millimeter dynamic drivers with this Tesla 2.0 technology is what they call it, but in reality it's just a marketing term for strong magnets in these guys, which means you get more volume from the same impedance, more so than you usually get. But you're still going to need an amp with these right off the bat. That's the first thing that I should say before you buy these. You're probably going to have a headphone amp because they are still not that easy to drive, despite the 250 ohms. But they are as easy to drive as maybe, like, I don't know, say 100 and 150 ohm headphones. Some of them anyway. Alright, so we'll start off with the build quality as usual. Now these things are tanks. This is like the German Panzer tank headphone if I've ever seen one. This thing is ridiculously solidly built. And on top of that, they even have individual serial numbers for each one. I don't think you guys can see that, but each one is individually serialized, which is kind of a hallmark of, more expensive and higher-end headphones. And these have that. But they're made in Germany. I think most, if not all, Beyerdynamic headphones are made in Germany, which is something that may or may not drive up the price. But anyway, they certainly are constructed from quality materials and very well constructed in the factory. Now, they have a replaceable spring steel headband, and it's also got this really soft leather lining that is plush up here, and metal on the yokes, which is normal. And with these, it even seems like they have metal outer part of these ear cups is made of metal too, which is awesome. The DT770s never had that. That was more of a plastic component. So lots and lots of use of metal here. So you also get in the box Velour Pads, which I have, and you get the Pleather Pads, which I had on here last, which is why they're still on there. And one of the reasons they're still on there is not just because I want to show them off or anything, but because it is really annoying to switch the pads. I should mention that Zeos would not have a good time with these headphones. The actual way you got to switch the pads is you put them in a groove, but with these headphones you kind of roll the pad, you keep rolling it around, and it kind of like slides itself onto around the ear cup outside here in a little notch. But it most like half the time it gets jammed up, and like some part ends up coming out of the little notch as you go around. Yeah, they're pretty annoying. Now it's possible, and I've done it like 5 times now, but I really am not the biggest fan of swapping the ear pads on this thing. Just something to note. So you also get a rigid. Now this is not a hard carrying case, but you do get a carrying case, and it's tough, but it's not you can see you can still bend it. So it's not a hard shell, but it's firm, I guess. I don't know what this is made out of, and it seems like it's rubberized. It says Beyerdynamic Professional Audio on it, so you're getting something serious. And inside, you've even got a little pouch here for some of your cables. And speaking of cables, you've got a straight cable, which I have never used, even though I have it in the box here. So you have a straight and you have a coiled cable. Well, that just fell on the floor. And what's awesome about these that you didn't get with the 770s is it's removable, which is Zeos would like. All right, and so the coiled cable, if you were to unwind this, they say it's 5 meters long, and the straight cable is 3 meters long. So they both are gold-plated mini XLR connector on this end, and well, this is not gold-plated. Actually, I think the inside of that might be gold-plated. But anyway, I do know that this side is gold-plated, and you have a screw-on 1/4-inch adapter, which hides a 3.5 millimeter. So kind of the standard, at least this is like a minimum spec thing at this price point. About $599 is what these things go for, which I'll talk about more later. And that's what you get. So as far as comfort goes, despite the very high build quality, there is obviously a downside that you're probably going to notice here when you have something made out of a lot of metal. These are heavy. They weigh a decent amount. They're not an Odyssey LCD3. However, they definitely might tire you out. For some people, might have your neck may get tired over time. That wasn't a big deal for me, but it was definitely noticeably heavier than a lot of headphones I reviewed lately, especially with these. So, up and down sides of premium materials, guys. Otherwise, I thought the comfort was quite excellent. I mean, this is a beyerdynamic. You guys know how I feel about beyerdynamic comfort by now. Probably like awesome. I love the velour pads they have on these things. So comfortable. So these are great, but they don't isolate as well as the Pleather Pads, which have a slightly smaller opening. And your ears may sweat a little bit over long listening sessions with these, with the Pleather Pads on. But you get a lot more isolation and would be more suitable for using in an office environment or in a library. Well, if you keep it low. I mean, these are full-size headphones. They do leak a little bit, but they leak a lot less with the Pleather Pads on here. So, comfort overall very good, but again, the Pleathers slightly less comfortable. I did not have really any issues with comfort on these. And now let's get to everyone's favorite section, the sound quality. So let's talk about the bass. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. The bass here is not so great. Not in quantity, but you have to realize in quality. So the bass here is a very good example of a somewhat punchy headphone that fails to deliver on detail. And what I mean by that is the bass here is very one-note sounding. I listen to a lot of EDM, so I hear a lot of the low bass, sub bass, mid bass. All that region is really well represented. Trust me, I've got I've got the tracks that I know what they're supposed to sound like too, which is important. And with these, you just kind of get a thump. And it's just like a generic thump with a lot of the tracks when you really should be getting a specific frequency or range or something like that. And it's just not here. And that is the biggest problem with the bass on these. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to detract from your listening experience. It may not. So this is something that's more of, as an audiophile, I look for these little details. You guys probably know this if you've been watching my reviews by now. I am very nitpicky. All audiophiles are. I have to tell you, like it is, the bass on these, it's fun, but it is loose, and it is not particularly well defined. And actually, it's less defined than the DT770s that I've reviewed before. It is very obvious, switching between the two, that the 770s, especially with the Velour Pads on them, and yes, I've tried the Pleathers on them now too, they are much more detailed. The bass is very specific. It's excellent. These, it's kind of just like, oh yeah, we're just going to flub along and groove along. It's kind of like, Actually, it kind of makes me think of the K240 a bit. It's kind of a groovy, slow bass that's fun, but not very specific. But there's a lot more bass in these than that headphone, a lot more. Anywho, other than that, there's another problem, which at 200 hertz is this big dip. And it shows up on measurements I've seen, and I can hear it quite easily. So that kind of reduces some of the bass on palm mutes on electric guitar that's distorted, or some very low vocal regions of the male voice, that kind of thing. You can fix it with EQ and tweak it, but again, you're never going to solve the problem with the slow bass here. So if that's what the bass is like on these, and with the Pleather Pads on, you're increasing the bass generally just across the range a little bit, a couple dB. Mid-range. I've always liked beyerdynamic's mid-range because it was non-fatiguing. And you guys know how I am picky about my upper mids. I don't like them to be too forward because then metal is incredibly harsh. But these are actually a weird example of something that actually has a little bit too little upper mids. And a lot of reviewers are going to say, wow, the upper mids are like way pushed back. And for me, it's kind of like, Yeah, I'm missing like 2 or 3 dB there. So strangely enough, it's one of the few headphones where I've actually pulled up 3.5K by a couple of dB, which is really unusual. So if you like neutral mid-range, these are going to be way far back from that. They're a little dark for me though. The speed is fine. I didn't have a huge problem with the details. It's not amazing, but it is a closed back headphone, so I think it's pretty good overall there. I don't have any really specific complaints about the upper mids on this thing. It's just dark. And the treble, now, this is the fun part. So the treble on these headphones is actually surprisingly different from a lot of beyerdynamics, and in a good and a bad way. So let's start with the usual. Do they have the beyerdynamic peaks? Yes. Yes, they're still there. You've still got the 6K and the 10K. But the interesting thing is they've seemingly toned them down quite a bit here, and it's probably due to some extra damping on this Tesla 2.0 driver. The Velour Pads definitely have more of that treble, and the Pleather Pads, interestingly enough, seem to mostly eliminate the 10K peak and somewhat reduce the 6K peak a little bit. It's still there, but it's not as bad. But overall, the treble's a lot smoother here in terms of peakiness, whereas I find the 770 just incredibly sibilant and bright. These are slightly sibilant and bright, depending on the genre of music you're listening to, anywhere from slightly piercing to not really annoying at all, and just slightly bright. Sadly, though, where these are lacking is, once again, like the bass, they're lacking in speed. There's some obvious haziness going on throughout the lower treble through the mid treble, and the problem is that that's something that we really don't want to be seeing here at this price point. And going back to the 770s again, you get an obviously amount more of those peaks. However, the detail is just a lot more obvious. Like, you can really, we're on a spectrum from M50X to HD800 treble, which is something between like hardly being able to distinguish the cymbals. Okay, maybe the M50 is not that bad, but like a total mess, to super clean electrostatic treble that's like you can taste the cymbals and the hi-hats. These are on the lower end of the spectrum, which is not what I want to hear when I just dropped $600. So that is a little bit disappointing for the price. They're not bad, and I'm glad that the peaks are less, but they need to do something about the detail in the treble. And with the Pleather Pads, like I explained, it's a little bit less further, so I like them with the Pleather Pads and the treble, but still, you've got that speed problem. It's still there. You can't like really solve that with pads, at least not on this headphone. All right, and soundstage, I'm a fan. You know, the beyerdynamics have always had great sound stages. These are no exception. I don't really have any complaints there. They're quite good. Quite exceptional. Maybe slightly wider with the Pleathers. The Velours. But I know I didn't really notice an obvious difference between the Velours and the Pleathers, partly because it takes so long to switch the pads in this thing, and it's so annoying. But I have no complaints there. Pretty good. Equalization. So as far as EQ goes, you guys know that I like my equalizer APO and my Peace GUI, if I've never mentioned those two programs before. And I like the EQ things because I always feel like there's room for improvement on every headphone. Once I realized that, it made sense. Anyway, that's a whole nother video that I want to make at some point, and I will. Hopefully I will. So yeah, I think EQ is good here. It reduces the sibilance in the Velour Pads. It reduces the sibilance a little bit on the Pleather Pads. You don't need quite as much. If you haven't noticed, I've been posting my equalization presets for each headphone that I recommend in the description, based on the Q value, the dB boost or lowering, and the preamp for each. It's basically parametric EQ settings for each headphone. So with the Pleathers, I need less EQ on these. Velours, it's a little bright for me. And of course that upper bass needs to be filled in more, so I've done that with the EQ as well. But it's not bad, but you will never be able to heal the speed problems with the bass and the treble in this headphone, which, you know, although it doesn't sound bad, it just doesn't sound as good as I think it should sound for how much these are going for. And that's really the going theme with this review that I want to get across. These are $5.99. Yes, you get the complete package. You've got this guy, you've got these really tank-like built quality headphones that are going to last like forever, individually serialized. You've got 2 pairs of pads, you've got 2 different cables, you've got the kitchen sink here, you've got everything. But the sound quality really should be more in line, I feel, for the price here. And it's especially odd considering that the 770s do some things better than these, and that probably should not be the case for the price here. So I would say, if I had to price this, I would say maybe like $299, $399, considering all the accessories, considering the insane build quality. I would say that's probably what these are really worth brand new. And that's something I wanted to drive home. But all that aside, I still think they're a fun headphone. I'm not going to knock them too much, because even if you aren't obsessed with sound quality, you may want to just give these a try. And if you're looking for something that's just super well built, just really classy, like really solid, and you need these accessories, and you need some isolation in the office, and you want to look like you're wearing something somewhat expensive, which, you know, this thing honestly does look very expensive, and it costs quite a bit as a result. But for the sound quality, again, if you're not big into sound as much as I am, it may be okay for you. You might drop that $5.99 or wait a little bit till it goes down to $4.99, something like that, before you grab these guys. And I wouldn't blame you. Honestly, I wouldn't blame you. I thought they were fun. I thought they didn't require a lot of EQ, and some people will have no problem listening to these without it. And but overall, in my opinion, I still think that Beyerdynamic needs to redo this driver. They need to take the 770, 880, 990 driver that they've had for years and years, and they need to damp the treble without sacrificing these speed problems. If I have a headphone that's 250 ohms, chances are I already got an amp. Why do I need Tesla efficiency for 250 ohms? If that's going to damage the speed qualities of the headphone, not a big fan of that. So that's what I think Beyerdynamic needs to do going forward with their Tesla technology, or maybe make a Tesla 3.0 that's based on the old 990-ish driver. That's what I'd do. Obviously, that's not easy, but hey, they're the ones who build the headphones, not me. Thanks, guys. I hope this was a useful review for you. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Metal571. I also have an Instagram if for some reason you're into cars like I am and want to see some random aspects of daily life from me. Also, Metal571 on there. So, and definitely I'll keep you guys up to date on Twitter. The next video, actually, which will be, I can already tell you, this guy, which is the Beyerdynamic I'm mirroring. Also made in Germany, also Tesla 2.0, also 250 ohms, but semi-open. So, that's coming up. Thanks for watching, and have some fun in the comments. Ask me questions. I'm always trying to reply to as many comments as possible while my channel is still not enormously huge. So I should be able to get to your question. Thanks, guys, and see you in the next one.